everyone. In today's topic, we're going to explore a widely avoided subject by the mainstream history, and it concerns the evidence that a white nation of people lived actually amongst the American natives before the British, Spanish, and French colonists came to the American continent. A few days ago, I was looking at some older 17th, 18th century maps when two words attracted my attention. Those words were Tahuglauk and Mozambique. Googling the words revealed that Google knows what Wikipedia does not. Surprisingly, there was very little contemporary information pertaining to the topic. At the same time, I found several 19th century books in Google Books. Started reading and found the information rather interesting, though there was not much of it. Tahuglauk and Mozambique were two apparently white nations, tribes of Native American people. Here's a couple of instances I found intriguing. Tahuglauk wear their beards 2 fingers breadth long, that their garments reach down to their knees, that they cover their heads with a sharp pointed cap, that they always wear a long stick or cane in their hands, which is tipped, not unlike what we use in Europe, that they wear a sort of boot upon their legs which reach up to their knee, that their women never show themselves, which perhaps proceeds from the same principle that prevails in Italy and Spain. The other one was, the lower part of that river is adorned with 6 noble cities, surrounded with stone cemented with fat earth, that the houses of these cities have no roofs, but are open above, like a platform, as you see them drawn in the map, that besides the above-mentioned cities, there are above 100 towns. In 1776, the Sioux informed Captain Jonathan Carver, who passed the winter among them, that there was a nation of white people above the sources of the Missouri who cultivated the ground and possessed arts unknown to other tribes. But even earlier than the time of Charlevoix and Carver, there was prevalent a vague idea of a powerful white people in the remote West. Below you will find the entire chunk of original information pertaining to the people of Tahuglauk and Mozambique published in 1852. Allegedly, his account took place in 1698. The person responsible for documenting it was Baron La Houtan, Lord Lieutenant of the French colony at Placentia in Newfoundland. Exploration and survey of the valley of the Great Salt Lake of Utah, including a reconnaissance of a new route through the Rocky Mountains. Let's look at the excerpt. It was at this place that the Baron received his information respecting the lake of salt water. He says, 2 days after, the cacique of the Gnassasteres came to see me and brought it with him 400 of his own subjects and 4 Mozambique savages, whom I took for Spaniards. My mistake was occasioned by the great difference between these two American nations, for the Mozambique savages were clothed, they had a thick bushy beard, and their hair hung down under their ears, their complexion was swarthy, their address was civil and submissive, their mien grave, and their carriage engaging. Upon these considerations, I could not imagine that they were savages, though after all I found myself mistaken. These 4 slaves gave me a description of their country, which the Gnassasteres represented by way of a map upon a deer's skin, as you see drawn in this map. Their villages stand upon a river that springs out of a ridge of mountains, from which the long river likewise derives its source, there being a great many brooks there, which by a joint confluence form the river. The boats with the drawing are thus described in the map. The vessels used by the Tahuglauk in which 200 men may row, provided they are such forms as the Mozambique people drew me on the bark of trees. According to my computation, such a vessel must be 130 feet long from the prow to the stern. On that part of the map which is confessedly derived from Indian authorities is the following note. A map drawn upon stag skins by Gnassasteres, who gave me to know latitudes of all places marked in by pointing to the respective places of heavens to that one or other corresponded to. For by this means I could adjust the latitude to half a degree or a little more, having first received from them a computation of distances and phases, each of which I compute to be the 3 long French leagues. The Moslem League nation is numerous and puissant. The 4 slaves of that country informed me that at the distance of 150 leagues from the place I then was, their principal river empties itself into a salt lake of 300 leagues in circumference, the mouth of which is 2 leagues broad. That the lower part of that river is adorned with 6 noble cities, surrounded with stones cemented with fat earth. That the houses of these cities have no roofs, but are open above, like a platform, as you see them drawn in the map. That besides the above-mentioned cities, there are above 100 towns, great and small, round that sort of sea, upon which they navigate with such boats as you see drawn in the map. And the people of that country made stuffs, copper axes, and several other manufactures, which the autogamies and my other interpreters could not give me to understand, as being altogether unacquainted with such things. That their government was despotic, and lodged in the hands of one great head, to whom the rest paid a trembling submission. That the people upon that lake are called Tahuglauk, and are as numerous as the leaves of trees. Such is the expression that the savages use for an hyperbole. That the Moslem League people supply the cities or towns of the Tahuglauk with great numbers of little calves, which they take in the above-mentioned mountain, and that the Tahuglauk make use of these calves for several ends, for they not only eat their flesh, but bring him up to labor and make clothes, boots, and stuff out of their skin. They added that it was their misfortune to be took prisoners by the Gnasisters with war which had lasted for 18 years, but that they hoped a peace would be speedily concluded, upon which the prisoners would be exchanged, pursuant to the usual custom. I could pump nothing further out of them with relation to the country, commerce, and customs of that remote nation. All they could say was that the great river of that nation runs along westward, and that the salt lake into which it falls is 300 leagues in circumference and 30 in breadth, its mouth stretching a great way to the southward. I would have fain satisfied my curiosity in being an eyewitness of the manners and customs of the Tahuglauk, but that being impracticable, I was forced to be instructed at second hand by these Moslem League slaves, who assured me upon the faith of a savage that the Tahuglauk wear their beards 2 fingers' breadth long, that their garments reach down to their knees, that they cover their heads with a sharp-pointed cap, that they always wear a long stick or cane in their hands, which is tipped, not unlike what we use in Europe, that they wear a sort of a boot upon their legs which reach up to their knee, that their women never show themselves, which perhaps proceeds from the same principle that prevails in Italy and Spain, and in fine, that these people are always at war with the puissant nations that are seated in the neighborhood of the lake, but with all that they never disquiet the strolling nations that fall in their way by reason of their weakness. An admirable lesson for some princes in the world, who are so much intent upon the making use of the strongest hand. This was all I could gather upon that subject. My curiosity prompted me to desire a more particular account, but unlikely I wanted a good interpreter, and having to do with several persons that did not well understand themselves, I could make nothing of their incoherent fustae. A detailed map accompanies this imaginative voyage up this most imaginary river. It is represented as flowing due east through 25 degrees of longitude, numerous streams putting into it on either side, with mountains, inlands, islands, villages, and domains of Indian tribes whose very names have at this day sunk into oblivion. The map was afterward published in 1710 by John Senex as a part of North America, corrected from the observations communicated to the Royal Society at London and the Royal Academy at Paris. And I have annexed it as a specimen of the geographical knowledge of America enjoyed at that period. I let her know that mind that the excerpt is from a book published in 1852, which is 154 years after the original account, is the last paragraph above. Now let's have a quick look of some maps with Tahuglauk and or Mozambique and make a little conclusion. Just like I said above, from what we know, neither Tahuglauk nor Mozambique were ever found. Of course, the Lord Lieutenant of the French colony at Placentia in Newfoundland was later accused of recording made-up stories, somewhat similar to the other case of Tartary, Africa, North America, etc. As usually, I prefer to consider the original sources before I do our contemporary ones. Somehow, I have very little trust in the dogmatic teachings of today. There are a few examples of Native Americans looking somewhat different from what we are used to. At least one some of the images. One of them is Chief Tecumseh. A myth, or a rumor, or a legend, or whatever you want to call it, covering the topic of the white Native Americans, both Americas, has been around for a while. I don't think it was ever officially confirmed, but if we imagine for a split second that there was any truth to it, we will probably come up with a reasonable question. Where are they? Well, I don't know. Why would new colonists want the world to know that there was a whole bunch of white people killed in the process of conquering to the west? We know that settlers fought against Native Americans in the process of moving west. We have drawings, sketches, engravings, documents, books, memoirs as proof. Clint Eastwood-like movies ingrained an image of an average Native American for generations to come. But what if this land was already inhabited by a multiracial local civilization, or not so local? Why did we have Russian or maybe Tartarian Fort Elizabeth in Hawaii? And why does it have distinctive traces of the star-shaped design? Why did we have Russian or maybe Tartarian Fort Ross all the way in California? A while ago, I saved the below image representing the advancement of the North American newcomers to the West. Might as well use it now. Columbus set foot on Hispaniola in 1492. Cortez overthrew the entire Aztec Empire by 1521. Pizarro conquered Peru and defeated Incas by 1535. Yet the North American settlers barely made it to the Mississippi River by 1820. 300-year difference is bizarre. Did North American natives have better defensive equipment? Well, maybe they did. Maybe they had an army to defend themselves, the one we will never be told about. I know the official version, I just find it hard to believe. Is there any official historian out there taking into consideration the possible transformation of the continents? Of course not, because there is no such official theory. We are used to thinking that ancient cartographers were fantasy artists of their time. After all, why would they care about an accurate representation of this planet on their maps? Yet if there was such a thing as global cataclysm of this magnitude, the rebalancing of the world powers would be inevitable. Thank you for your time. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know down below in the comments what are your thoughts on this. Until next time.